You know, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for me to finally admit, formally at least, I know we've made a few insinuations over the past few years, but maybe it's finally time to formally admit that a take that I had back in the 2017-18 season was completely wrong. What exactly is the take that I'm referring to? Well, it's a video that I published back in the day that I thought was going to pop off, and to my credit, it actually did. It got a good amount of views, and it did help boost the growth of the channel. Back in this time frame, we weren't really too popular. Of course, it was 6 years ago, so things were different back then, but in 2017, I uploaded this video. Olli Juolevi is not a bust. Vancouver Canucks didn't make the wrong choice with Finnish D-man in 2016. And back then, it was a pretty rational argument, I feel, to talk about the things that we had talked about, project this player in the ways that we had projected him, and go over his growth, his progression in Finland, and how this would translate into the NHL. It's just, as we all kind of know, he did not pan out. Now, you could say there were a few external factors that played a part in that. Oh, he got injured multiple times, there were knee problems. But long story short, Olli Juolevi not being a bust? Yeah, my bad. That's really wrong. And in fact, I don't see the end of that, you know? Like, anytime anybody mentions this guy, Olli Juolevi, it always is met with a bunch of whining and cynicism from Vancouver Canucks fans, and rightfully so. Olli Juolevi was drafted 5th overall by the team back in 2016, and the guy taken immediately after is a player who is arguably leading his team to the Stanley Cup and winning the Conn Smythe in the process in Matthew Tkachuk. We had made the entire video yesterday talking about Tkachuk and the heroics, just how good of a player he is, how clutch he has been. He's gotten a point on all of the game-winning goals in the Carolina sweep. 3 of them were scored by him, 2 of them in overtime, 1 of them in the last seconds of Game 4. And so Matthew Tkachuk, with multiple 100-point seasons on different teams, has shown off that he is just an absolute stud. And nobody is going to go out there and discredit the credibility, just the profile, how well he has been performing, and just the fact that he's worth more than the 9.5 AAV that he got signed to back when he was traded to Florida in the first place. But the reason we're making this video today is not because of anything that's happened with Juolevi or because of anything that's happened with Tkachuk lately. Instead, we're going over onto the Sekeres and Price show because we had ourselves an interview done with Gary Mason. Now, Gary Mason isn't particularly a guy that does hockey-related things. He's a Canadian journalist who works for the Globe and Mail. He does opinion posts about things that are published on that website. He's not necessarily a quote-unquote hockey journalist. But he did make an appearance on Sekeres and Price, and he shared some thoughts that he had regarding his, let's just say, dinner partner, Francesco Aquilini, Vancouver Canucks owner, and the puppeteer behind this team. Now, we're going over onto an article on CanucksArmy.com written by Mike Gold, because what Gold does was he transcribes a lot of what it is Mason says on the Sekeres and Price interview, and essentially the title of the article goes out there and describes why we're making this video in the first place. Before we read it, of course, though, links in the description to both the interview video, it's on YouTube, Sekeres and Price's channel, as well as the article that we're reading as well. We're only going on to the article just so we could have a transcription of the quotes I could put on the screen, screenshot it, it's easier for everybody involved. But this is what the article is titled. Report. Canucks owner Francesco Aquilini was livid when Jim Benning took Olli Juolevi over Matthew Tkachuk. And this is sort of where Pandora's box starts to open, because not only is it the Vancouver Canucks fanbase that was pissed off and aggravated by this decision back in 2016, but apparently the owner is too. Now, we're going over onto the quote. I want you to pay very close attention as to how Gary Mason makes his point. They were talking about Benning, they were talking about his tenure, and then Mason says this. I think the biggest thing that surprised me is when he passed on Tkachuk. Aquilini was absolutely livid about that they missed the mark so badly, and yet, even after that, he left Benning in that position. Now, the way this quote is phrased, I'm not necessarily too sure if Mason is saying, okay, from the perspective of Aquilini in 2016, he was already pissed off, he was livid, that's livid, very, very angry. He was livid that this pick was made. However, he did leave Benning in that position afterwards. It is kind of interesting because if you scroll down further into the article here, there are some more quotes made by Mason regarding Aquilini. I think the biggest mistake that Francesco has made during his time as the owner was with Benning. Aquilini and I have had conversations about this over lunch, and he totally agrees. He left Benning in that position far too long, and that's come back to bite him. And this is where things sort of don't really align in the ways that people would expect them to. And the reason I say it like that is because, sure, it's interesting to hear from Aquilini whisperer Gary Mason that apparently Aquilini was regretful over how long he left Benning as the GM of the team. He was livid over how Benning chose Juolevi over Tkachuk. But this is where things sort of contradict themselves, because if you go over to this tweet thread by Best Mode regarding Gary Mason's interview claiming that Francesco was livid with the Juolevi pick and that it keeps him up at night, quote-unquote, this is what happened 2 years later in 2018. Francesco promotes Jim Benning, putting him in charge of everything. Jim Benning will now head up hockey operations and report directly to the ownership group. Then you had yourselves 2019, 3 years after 2016, thanks to notoriously good negotiator Jim Benning. The tweet from Aquilini in 2019 says this: thanks to very good, prolonged negotiating by Jim Benning, I am confident we have substantially upgraded our decor. 2020 happens, 4 years later. What a game! A great night for this franchise, a testament to Jim and his group for the way they put this team together, and Travis for the way he got them believing in each other and playing for one another. 2021, Aquilini says this: I have full confidence in Jim, Travis, and this group, and I have no plans to make changes. And so, even though Gary Mason is saying publicly, yeah, Aquilini doesn't like that he left Benning in there for too long, he was livid with the pick, there were so many bookmarks over the years where Aquilini has prolonged and extended his gratitude and acknowledgement, appreciation for Jim Benning and what Benning has done. Sure, you could say, oh, but that's without hindsight. That's without hindsight. Lego, you can't go out there and criticize him for saying it like that because that's without hindsight. But the thing is, the Canucks were already really bad and not progressing in the ways that we thought they would post-2018 for a while. I mean, they had the bubble run in the playoffs, yes, but they had to squeak in there through the play-in series. It's not like the win over Minnesota and then the win over a lackadaisical Blues team that was coming off of a championship the year prior could be viewed with the amount of success that it appears Aquilini was viewing the team's lenses within. I think that because of how the team performed back in 2020 and that bubble, Aquilini was like, yeah, okay, we're doing a great thing here. Look at our team. We're building a good team. But as far forward as 2021, Aquilini was like, yeah, no, we're good with these guys. We are very okay with how this team is being run. And then, just a few months after this tweet was made, the Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade was done too. And so, hindsight? I don't know, dude. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, all your opinions about how the Vancouver Canucks fumbled the bag in 2016, how Olli Juolevi was the guy instead of Tkachuk. We've sung the song and dance before, talking about the idea of, oh, what if the Canucks got Tkachuk instead of Juolevi? Long story short, the conclusion is they probably would not have gotten Pettersson, but I mean, look, isolated mistakes are isolated mistakes. Juolevi over Tkachuk was a terrible move. Even getting somebody else, like Keller or something, that would have been fine. Like, he's a great player. If you wanted to do the entire 2016 redraft without missing out on Pettersson the next year, then hey, getting Keller and having him spend a year with Boston College the next season would not have affected the team in the negative way to miss out on PD in 2017. So, I don't know, it's kind of frustrating going out there and revisiting that, especially acknowledging how good and how clutch Matthew Tkachuk has been for the Florida Panthers in this year's playoff run. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this interview. Olli Juolevi, Matthew Tkachuk, Gary Mason talking about Aquilini and how Aquilini is very upset about how everything went down. Although, at this point, I mean, it's very easy for Aquilini to point the blame and say, oh yeah, it's the guy that we fired's fault. Like, I was against it the entire time, and now that the guy's gone, we could go out there and say that I was against it the entire time. I don't know, something about that rubs me the wrong way, but you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99, and bye.